Hi, it's Brad with Ocean Consulting Services. For today's topic, we'll be discussing IRS collection notices. What do they mean? Let's go over some highlights. Admittedly, IRS notices are cryptic. Notices are generated from an antiquated computer system, probably dates back to 60s and 70s, and the notices look like they were generated in the 70s. Recently, the IRS has received additional funding and there are funds slated for technology improvements. So hopefully we'll see an improvement over time, but for now, we're stuck with what the IRS is producing. In the collection process, there are a number of notices. Many of them are just reminders of your debt and giving you options to pay the debt either in full or over time. So why does the IRS issue all these notices to you? Well, it gets back to the Constitution. The 14th Amendment has a provision that calls for due process of law. So the IRS can't just take your property. They need to notify you of the debt. They need to give you the right to be heard by the IRS or by a court regarding the debt before they can take your property. So this is no different than any other situation where the government wants to take your property. They do need to follow the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. So first off, who sent the notice? Typically in the collection process, the notices are generated what they call from the campus. Notices can also be generated from the field. Now, the campus refers to the automated collection service centers that are located around the country, while the field refers to revenue officers who are actually working your particular case. So the majority of notices in the collections area come from the campus. They are generated from what's called ACS, Automated Collection Services, and there are a series of notices issued before there's any sort of forced collection of the tax debt. So let's run through the typical notices that are generated when it comes to IRS collections. The first one is called a CP14, and CP refers to computer paragraph, or basically a computer-generated notice, automatic. CP14 is the notice from the IRS. This is your initial notice that you owe money. They give you what they call a 30-day deadline, although the deadline is in reality just an IRS deadline. They can't generate a second notice until the 30 days expires. I put the term deadline in quotes because if you don't do anything, really what it means is you'll receive another notice. The second notice is called a CP501. This is a reminder notice. It's your first reminder of the debt, and again, you're given this 30-day deadline. The next notice that's generated is a CP503. This is the second notice of balance due, and it's again your second reminder of the debt, and it has the 30-day deadline attached to it. Now the next notice is a CP504. This is called an intent to levy. This is just another notice of the debt and gives you another 30 days, what they call 30-day deadline, but again, meaning that after 30 days they can issue another notice. Now continuing on, the next notice is called an LT11. Now this is the important one. It's called a final notice of intent to levy and notice of your right to a hearing. So this contains a real 30-day deadline. If you don't respond within 30 days, the IRS can take forced collection efforts. In other words, they can levy your bank account, they can levy your wages, they can start proceedings against your home. And this is the important deadline that you do take an action within the 30 days in the LT11 notice. It's important to note that although you need to take action at this point to stop the levy, you really can approach the IRS anytime once the first notice has been generated. So once the IRS sort of assesses the tax, they record the tax liability, you can approach the IRS to work out an arrangement. You can work out an installment agreement. You can potentially ask for an offer in compromise. You might qualify for innocent spouse protection. It's important to recognize that even though these notices contain a lot of information, you can always approach the IRS even after they begin a levy against your assets. But most people want to approach them and should approach them before the levy action actually takes place. With this final notice, there is the option to ask for what they call collection due process. It's called CDP. It's a request for a hearing of your situation before what the IRS calls their appeals division. This is separate from ACS, separate from revenue officers. It's really an independent arm of the IRS that hears tax disputes. In order to get the CDP hearing, you need to request it before the expiration of that 30-day deadline. And it will stop forced collection. So this does put a hold on collection activities. If you miss the 30 days, you do have up to a year to request what they call an equivalency hearing. The issue with this is the IRS is not required to stop forced collection. Ideally, you want to respond to that final notice within 30 days and request a CDP hearing. So let's wrap up. As mentioned in prior videos, there is a 10-year collection period for the IRS to attempt to collect their tax debt. They're required to provide you notice of the debt and your right to be heard before taking your property. As I mentioned, forced collection can be stopped usually anytime prior to the 30 days expiring with the LT11 letter. Moral of the story is open your mail, contact the IRS. The IRS, contrary to popular opinion, does not really want to enforce collection. They want to work with you in order to come up with an appropriate solution that does not involve a levy of your property. And as mentioned, those frequently involve an installment agreement or an offer in compromise. That's it. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, comments, or need assistance. Thanks.